this is a little loading area on my small farm where vegetables come out of the garden, which is right over here, and then they go right into my refrigerated trailer, which I keep under the back deck of my house to keep it out of the direct sunlight and rain. I built this trailer about a year and a half ago, and it's been running 24/7 ever since, running off a window AC unit with a Coolbot controller and spray foam insulation. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I built this trailer. We're going to go over some general maintenance that we're going to do today, a year and a half later, and then we'll also talk about what I did well and what I would do differently if I were to do this again. Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Chef Mikey. Welcome back to Chef's Harvest Farm. Coolbot's been really good to us all. They hooked us up with an affiliate link down below. It's going to give you $25 off your Coolbot purchase. It's going to give me $25 commission, so help brother out. Order your Coolbot through the link below. Thanks y'all. So I store it under the back deck of my house. Really helps it hold temperature, and if I keep it under there, it stays at 34 pretty well. You know, maybe you don't have a back deck, you were able to put it under a carport, put a tent up, and just kind of keep the direct sunlight off of it, and that's just going to help it run more efficiently, so it uses less electricity and holds a better temperature for you. And so right here is like a little like grass patch where I can back my truck down, and then I just pull it out every week to take it to the farmer's market. But you can see I got this little dolly here, so I hook that dolly up and I can just kind of pull it out here while I back my truck down to get everything hooked up. And then when I bring that to the farmer's market with me, so I can just kind of disconnect it, and then I pull it up into the little spot where I hold it behind my booth. So I got the little dolly off Amazon. It was just like $200 or $300. If you plan to have a refrigerated trailer like this and you need to move around at all, it's worth every penny of the $200 investment. I don't know what I would do to get it in and out of there if I didn't have the dollies. When I built this, I bought the trailer off Facebook Marketplace for $2,500. So there's like wood on the walls and on the top and everything in the floor. And I stripped all that right off, so it's just a metal frame on the inside. I basically just cut a hole in the front of this using like a jigsaw, I guess they call it. I borrowed it from my friend Paul at Mountain Roots Farm. Took the trailer over to his place, and he's got like the tool that I used. Yeah, I think it's like a jigsaw, right? And I just cut the square. I measured it out, the size of the frame here, and then I brought it back home. I don't have like metal welding skills, or I just used wood, and I don't really have construction skills either. I just did the best I could with the knowledge that I had. So I framed this in before I insulated anything, right? So I built this on the outside, and then I did the same thing on the inside. So it was identical. And then took really long bolts, and I bolted it all together through the outside of the trailer here, right? So the frames are pinching the front of the trailer. This thing ain't moving. Now, over time, rot is a concern, right? Because it's wood. And then I spray foamed in the wood on the other side. So if water does get in there, there's no way for it to dry out. So, you know, over time, this thing will probably need to be replaced, but I try to take the best care of it as possible. And that's why I keep it under the back deck of my house. It never really gets rained on. Every now and then it'll rain at the farmer's market and it'll get wet, which is super concerning. But you can see how I've like caulked it down the sides. It's painted. We're going to repaint it today. We're going to recaulk any cracks or anything. Just kind of stay on top of that and make sure that we keep it nice so that water doesn't get in there. We don't experience any type of rot anytime soon. But you know, if I could do it again, I would definitely construct all of this out of metal and just frame this in so that like rot is not even an option. That's the only wood that I used on this build. And then when I mounted it at a little bit of an angle because there's a hole right under there where water, the condensation from the AC unit leaks out. So you have to have it like slanted a little bit in the correct direction. And if I don't have like the trailer angle right, like if the jack's too high and it's tilted up, then water comes out the front. So I always need to make sure that I have the jack so that this is slanted downwards at an angle so the water drips out in the right direction. Because if it drips out the front, then it's getting that wood wet where it's framed in on the inside. So come on, I'll show you. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at it. So here you can see I just kind of like put that piece of wood, and it's just like kind of resting on the frame. I never actually like attached it to that frame. And then when I framed it in too, like you can kind of see how it's got like these brackets. So I put those like everywhere for extra stability. You can see I've got like a big bracket under here holding it for stability. And then we caulked all the cracks so no water can get in there as best as possible. So we sealed that. It's not a great job. It's a little bit messy, but it hopefully just like keeps some water from getting down in there. And like I said, it never really gets wet anyways. We do everything we can to not let it get wet. And then this is like the plug. I just drilled a hole right through the whole thing. I installed this plug so I could just plug that into an extension cord, and then there's a plug on the other side where I plug in the AC unit, and it's got a couple outlets, so I plug the AC unit and the Coolbot into it. And then this is just my trailer dolly, and I got this for like 200 bucks off Amazon, and it's well worth every penny. So I'm not having to like try to maneuver this around with my truck. I'm not trying to have to lift this up, because I often have like 1,000 pounds worth of produce in this thing when it's full, and that means getting it out of here, getting it hooked up at the farmer's market. You know, it's heavy, it ain't no joke. So I hook this thing right under here, and then I can maneuver it. And you always want to be really careful, because it can be dangerous. If this is not locked on properly and it slips off when you pull it, then that AC unit could drop and hit somebody in the head, and it could be super dangerous. So it's not something that you want to just send some kid over to go pull your trailer out and take care of things, right? Somebody doing this has to be responsible, because somebody can get seriously injured. Like I showed you on the outside, there's an identical frame on the inside, but then I spray foam insulated over that. And I didn't actually do it, I hired somebody to do it. I'm sure there's a local insulation company near you that does spray foam, and that's what I went with on this build. Every other YouTube video I could ever find online, they're putting foam board insulation up there, you know, they're spending days worth of labor. This took 15 minutes. These guys, they pulled in with a truck, they backed in right over here. A few guys hopped out of the truck, they come over here with a hose, and some dude just spray foamed the whole thing in about 15 minutes. Cost me 1,200 bucks, but well worth every penny, because I mean, it would have cost me days of labor trying to like put foam board up in here, and then foam board has cracks, you got to tape them, you got to seal them, and then you're still going to get leaks. Like, that's why they have an R value, but spray foam doesn't need an R value. I got 2 inches thick of spray foam, and you don't need any more than that. The R value of spray foam is not equivalent to the R value of foam board. There's no need to put more than 2 inches of spray foam insulation. I did extensive research on this. I'll try to find this chart that I found that I could put up on the screen that kind of shows you that there's no, if you put 4 inches of spray foam, it's not worth the money, right? It's going to cost, so it would cost me $2,400 to insulate this, and I would get an additional 2% retention for $2,400, right? So it's not worth the additional cost for the amount of additional R value that you get. But spray foam is completely encapsulated, so air can't seep out. There's no cracks for it to seep out. It's like a balloon, right? It's just all the air's trapped in there, and the only place it's getting out is anywhere where the AC unit is installed, and then these cracks in the door, and that's it. So it's way more efficient than foam board insulation is. And you can go on the Coolbot website, they're going to tell you like R value, you need like 30 R value, but that is only true if you're using foam board insulation. This is not true if you're using spray foam insulation like I've used here. You know, you can do all the research you want, you can argue with me all day long, but I'll tell you from experience, this thing's been running 24/7 for a year and a half. It holds 34 degrees, no problem. So I would never put more than 2 inches of spray foam insulation on. I had to make the decision when they showed up to spray foam it, because I was thinking about like spray foaming the underneath of the trailer, and then I'd still have the wood floor. In hindsight, I'm not really sure which is better yet. You could definitely spray foam like the underneath of the trailer instead of the floor, and then you'd still have a floor here, but then you'd have the cracks where air leaks out. So I chose to encapsulate the whole thing, and then I built a floor. So I'll show you the floor over here. What I ended up doing is basically building like a removable floor. Like I said, I stripped all the wood off the sides and the roof that were in here, kind of like walls, right? And just exposed like the metal framing with the sheet metal. So those pieces of wood are already cut to the perfect size for the floor. So I took all those pieces of wood and I just glued them together with construction adhesive, and then I made this floor. And I just got some vinyl flooring scraps. They sell like scraps of vinyl flooring at Home Depot. So I just like bought the scrap for like $10, and then I glued that. So you can see I just like kind of glued together the pieces of wood, and then glued the vinyl on top of the wood, and then I glued a piece of foam board insulation here, and that just kind of gives it some cushioning so that it doesn't damage the spray foam insulation. Then I suppose it might insulate it a little bit more on the floor. And that's how I built the floor. So the floor is completely removable, and I could just pull it out. We cleaned it today, washed it and everything, and then we'll just slide it back in here. I got some duct tape on the edges just to keep you know, sometimes we like kick it when we're climbing in and out of the cooler, so that's why I put some duct tape on there, just kind of protect the end. What I didn't really consider when I built this thing is that spray foam reacts with UV lights. So when I open these doors at the farmer's market, like I said, I typically keep it under my back deck, which is great. It stays out of the sun and everything, but I bring it to the farmer's market with me. A lot of times I open the doors just like they're open right now, and I get distracted or something, and the door just stays open by accident. I mean, it's happened. It's been open for like an hour, and I didn't really notice, you know. It is what it is, but when the sunlight gets in here, it reacts with the spray foam, and it degrades the spray foam, makes it less effective, and it turns it like yellow. If you've ever seen spray foam that's yellow, it's kind of oxidized, and it's not going to be as efficient, and it's not going to work as good. So today we're just doing some general maintenance. We got it all cleaned up. We resealed some of the outside there with caulk to make sure that no water gets in there and it stays dry, so this thing can last a good long time. And then I also had one of my workers, Max, just kind of paint the whole inside. So she put a coat of acrylic paint on the inside, and I'll show you the types of paint that I used for it today. Now it's a little bit difficult to actually paint it. I'll see if I can show you close up, because like the spray foam is not flat, right? It's really rigid, so we'd have to get in there with like a paintbrush and really get in all those little grooves, or you could use a sprayer, but we don't have that. We just painted it with a roller and paintbrush today. Did the best that we could. So this is the paint that I'm going to use today, and I went with this stuff because it's like outdoor paint, so you could spray it. So if I ever wanted to like clean this out or anything like that, I could just spray it out with a hose. I don't need to worry about like damaging it. Exceptional UV defense, which is what I'm really looking for, because what I'm really looking to do is keep direct sunlight off the spray foam when I'm at the farmer's market. And sometimes like I've got it pulled out right now, you know, and I got to unpack and sunlight gets in there. So I'm really just looking to protect it from the UV light. And then this is acrylic paint, so it's like anti-chip. Sometimes when I drive, you know, and I get to the market, then you can tell my totes have been banging against the sides of the cooler, so it can like damage the insulation. So I'm really just looking to protect the insulation. You definitely don't want to use like spray paint, and there's some other types of paint with certain chemicals in it that would degrade your insulation. So you want to be careful, do some research. I did some research. Acrylic paint and latex paint are the best paints for spray foam, so that's what I would go with. I wouldn't use anything else, but you can do your own research and use whatever paint you want, but just know that don't use spray paint, and there's probably a couple other types of paint that you would not want to use. So, I mean, then the next steps after that is really straightforward. You just install your AC unit. I mounted it, like I said, I framed the whole inside of that box with wood, and then I put the mounting harness in there, and I just put like self-tapping screws all the way around, as many as I could, so that thing ain't going anywhere. And then you slide the AC unit in. There's a couple spots where you can bolt that in also, so that's all bolted in, so that thing's not moving. And then I kind of like cut the controller off the front of the AC unit there, you can see, and then just remove the rest of it. It's kind of like held on with zip tie there, and that's just the controller part that you need. But the whole front of the unit was it would like fall off if I hit a bump when I drive, so I just kind of cut the controller part off the rest of the plastic and mounted that up there with zip ties. And then I mounted the Coolbot controller right next to it and just installed that with screws like directly into the spray foam, just like a little tiny screw, so it doesn't go in very far. It's just, and that's what holds it there, and I've had no problems with that. Even driving around with it, it's never fallen off. And then like I showed you how I installed the outlet on the other side of it, so that's where it's plugged into. So now I just plug the whole thing right into an extension cord like any other refrigerator would be plugged in. You just plug it into an outlet, so it works perfect like that. And then for the doors, like I said, like I didn't want to spray foam the doors because it would be hard to get like perfect so that the doors would actually close. You see, I got these gaskets, and that helps keep it like airtight, so not very much air gets through because of that. So I wanted to make sure I kept that airtight seal. You know, I'd like to put a third layer of insulation just for peace of mind, really, but I just so I took construction adhesive and I glued it. I glued the foam board right to the door, And then I took like just washers with self-tapping screws, and I put them all the way through, so the construction adhesive held it up there so that I could get the screws in with these washers, so then the big washers don't so the screw doesn't get sucked right in, and that kind of holds it up, right? So I put those kind of everywhere here, and then I did it on the first layer, and then I added a second layer and glued the second layer on top of the first layer, and then put additional screws with washers onto the second layer to hold it all together. And then I just put this duct tape on, just kind of keep the foam from like chipping, you know, like when we're opening and closing the doors and everything. And I mean, that's worked really good. Every now and then it like gets bumped in the wrong type of way, but for the most part, just like a little duct tape on the edge is sufficient. And I mean, there's definitely better ways to do this. I do not have like construction experience. I've built very few things in my life besides this farm. I guess like since I started building the farm, I've gained a lot more experience building things, but I was a chef before, you know, I cook food. So I had no experience doing this type of stuff, so anybody could do it is the point. And definitely like the spray foam insulation is the way to go. I mean, like I didn't have to have any type of craftsmanship, right? I mean, you don't want to be out there like this sucks, like measuring foam board, taping it up, like dude, that's for the birds, you know. You don't want to do that. You want to go with spray foam. All right, so I'm gonna grab the floor and I'm gonna put the floor in there. It's really straightforward, just kind of slides in. I'll show you how we do that. All right, so you see how the floor goes back in there pretty easily. I mean, it's removable. This is a little bit struggle for me to get in there by myself, and I gotta be careful that I don't damage the insulation. I definitely scraped it a little bit, so I guess there could be some sort of way that you would like, you know, build like a protective wall in there. That would be great if I had like plastic sides. I don't know, you'd have to like screw into the spray foam, which would make it less efficient, but I don't have any problems like this. It's just like sometimes I get to the farmer's market and I could tell the crates kind of like jumbled around a little bit and knocked against the wall, but in the big scheme of things, it doesn't really cause any problems. And spray foam's like super rigid. You can see I just walked on it. You can walk on that stuff all day long. I think they told me it's like 200 pounds per square inch that it can hold, so it's like super rigid material. But I just like to make sure that I protect it because it costs a lot of money, right? So I want to protect my investments. That's why we made sure that we have the floor and we don't actually just walk on it, because usually we're just like throwing crates in there and sliding them right into the back, stacking them on top of each other. So if we didn't have the little floor in there, then it would kind of damage the spray foam over time. So when the door's closed just like that, it's a pretty snug fit with like the floor, the insulation, the gaskets around the door, right? I gotta push it in a little bit, and then when I clip that thing, it holds the whole thing tight, pretty snug, and it's a pretty airtight fit. And like I said, I don't have any problems keeping this system 34 degrees in 100-degree heat all summer. So the way it actually works, right, is this is just a window AC unit, and these things will work on mini splits, but they don't work on portable AC units. I keep this controller at 60 degrees, that's the lowest that it goes. The Coolbot controller has all these wires, one's like the plug, the outlet, the thermometer that's dangling here to monitor the temperature in here, but it's got a heater wire, which is right here. You shove it into these coils, and it heats up so that it tricks the AC unit into thinking that it's warmer than it actually is. So it just continues to blow cold air into here. And then this is a 5x8 trailer, so it's a 5x8 room, and this is an 18,000 BTU AC unit that's good to like cool down a 50x25 room, I believe. So it's way overpowered for cooling down such a small area. So because of those two things combined, it tricks it into thinking it's hotter, and it just keeps blowing air, but it's also overpowered to be able to cool down 50 by 25 foot room. It cools this thing down in minutes. If I close these doors over here, this whole thing's gonna be down 34 in about 10 minutes guaranteed. And so that's how it works. It just kind of overrides the system and makes the AC unit a refrigerator. But I mean, the cool thing is this AC unit, brand new, cost me $300. Now, if you're gonna call a commercial repair refrigeration guy, he's gonna charge you $300 just to come out, talk to you, and tell you what's wrong with your refrigerator. So, and then, you know, commercial refrigeration, often if your compressor goes out, it's typically a $1,000 to $2,000 repair to replace a compressor, which if you get to that point, then you're already having issues, and the whole thing is gonna need, your whole refrigerator is gonna need replaced eventually. But this cooler can essentially last me forever, and all I would have to do is replace another AC unit for $300. So that's the nuts and bolts of the whole Coolbot system. You know, it's like super simple. It took me, I mean, say 1 day's worth of work, basically. You know, I drove it over to my friend's house one day, cut the hole, put the framing up. Another day took me a few hours, and then the spray foam insulation, hook everything up. Took me 1 day by myself. I had no help. So the whole thing's like super easy. The whole build cost me around $4,000, and so now I'm gonna push it under my deck and get loaded up for farmers market for tomorrow. Hope this was useful for you, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate y'all watching.